Hello, I'm Rod Whiting from Love in Your Garden, a Facebook group and now a YouTube channel for members passionate about gardening. Today I want to talk to you about designing your dream garden. We've got some amazing gardens on our Love in Your Garden Facebook group, and it can be a bit overwhelming when you look at your own garden in comparison. But there's one thing they have in common. They didn't start that way. Someone had a vision, and over time what you see now became reality. In this video, we're going to take you through 8 key steps leading to a successful garden project with one of the UK's most successful garden designers, Professor David Stevens. We're really fortunate to have David as a member. He's won countless awards during his long career, spanning more than 50 years. He's helped design beautiful gardens all over the world, and now he's offering that experience to you. So what are those key steps to your dream garden? Over to you, David.
I think the main thing is primarily, what do you want the garden for? What's it going to achieve? What do you need to really get from what's often a small space, but you must get the best from it. So we need to think about things like style, the kind of style of garden you want, certainly budgets, which are always important, and I'm afraid very often it's cost a little bit more than you're going to think on construction. Certainly the kind of planting style that you want, and really why not think about things like what's outside the garden, good views, bad views, borrowed landscape. So initially you're just looking at the garden in the round, you're looking ahead, you're not getting down to planning at this stage. I think the first thing in planning a garden is to take your time. Don't rush out to the local garden centre and nursery and buy plants where you haven't got a clue to put them. I always say to people, take a year if you move to a new garden. See how the seasons change. See how the sun swings throughout the day in the summer and the winter. And that will give you a really good idea. Look at changes of level. Is there a slope where you could put steps or run a beautiful lawn sweeping away, or even a water feature? So levels and the way that the garden is actually put together, those are desperately important. Once you've got that basic plan, then the fun comes of really filling it in. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, really. Paving links into raised beds, links into other planted areas. The lawns then move away. And I also say keep things maybe architectural close to the house to link with it, and grade the garden away so it's softer and looser and gives you a real feeling of movement that will create a feeling of space and make the garden feel larger, possibly, than it really is. It's desperately important, it really is, to work it out in advance, because garden construction is a sequence. It just doesn't happen by itself overnight. So you need to think about primarily services. Do you want water in the garden? Where do you want water taken down into the garden? Is it a standpipe near the shed or near a greenhouse? You need to think about electricity, which must be done by a qualified electrician, obviously, which will be an armoured cable, but where do you want the lighting circuits to go? Power for a pool, power obviously for any kind of powered equipment, mains lighting, water, all of those things need getting down. The trenches needing digging, because if you're going to leave it too late and you've already laid a wonderful paved area or patio and you've forgotten about the electrics, it's going to be a terrible game to lift the paving, put your trenches in, lay the cables and get your services in from there. So do think about these things first. Well, your hard landscape really forms the bones of the composition, and I always try and encourage people to think about vernacular materials, in other words materials that are common in the area in which you live. If your house is built from brick, then use some brick paving in the garden. It makes sense, it links house and garden together. I do prefer natural stone rather than porcelain paving, which incidentally has a very high carbon footprint. So think about using natural materials as much as possible, and that will in fact create that feeling of naturalness in your garden, which is absolutely ideal and perfect. You know, planting is, to many people, what a garden's all about, although obviously hard landscape is the structure of the garden. There are so many things you need to take into account, none of them too difficult. First of all, what is your soil like? People say, is it heavy or is it light? Well, up to a point that doesn't matter. The really important thing is it acid or is it alkaline? And you can get a simple soil testing kit that will tell you if that soil is acid or alkaline, and that in turn will determine the kind of plant that you'll grow. So acid plants, which we call ericaceous plants, rhododendrons, azaleas, pieris, camellias, those would thrive in an acid soil, whereas in a chalky or an alkaline or limey soil, they're all the same thing. The whole family of the pea family, buddleias, clematis, those will thrive in an alkaline soil. So soil testing is paramount. Think also about the structure, and the more organic material you can get into a bed or a border or even underneath a lawn, it will help to break up a heavy soil, and it will help to bind together a soft sandy soil. So mulch and well-rotted compost, well-rotted manure, and it must be well rotted down, is the key to good plants. Good soil equals good planting. Well, do you know what do people do on the first fine day of spring? They jump into their car and they bowl off down to the local garden centre and they go on a random binge of purchases. Nothing wrong with any of what they bought, but they haven't thought about where to place the plants and how those plants will relate to the overall garden. And do think about planting successionally so that your planting works throughout the year. Most gardens look good in June, but you need to think of spring flowering plants, bulbs, then your early perennials coming on, then we move into summer with our wonderful summer flowering plants, shrubs and hardy perennials again, and of course autumn brings autumn colour as well as much flower and foliage as well. And don't forget winter. So many plants you can choose that are evergreen. They will provide flower in the winter, things like hellebores, which are wonderful, hamamelis. So the garden honestly should and can look good for 365 days of the year. Many people get afraid of large borders, and in fact large borders or borders which have a reasonable depth allow a collection and a selection of plants to grow happily together. In my mind, a border is a minimum of 1 to 1.5, and very often you can make a border deeper than that. And in my garden, which isn't over large, I've got borders that are 3 metres deep. And when you think that an average shrub can grow 2 metres by 2 metres in, say, 5 years' time, you can see how you'll need space for plants and planting. And when we're mixing plants like shrubs and hardy perennials and ground covers, you really can expand your borders, and they will give you far more interest throughout the year again as a small border, which can never contain the mix of plants that you need to give you that overall interest. You know, size isn't everything, and I started my career in London, where I cut my teeth, if you like, on small town gardens, and unfortunately gardens are getting smaller and smaller now, but that doesn't preclude a good design that works for you. A garden should fit you like a glove, so think about space. Think about the areas that you want for sitting and dining and play. Think about if you want a lawn, again for play. Think about the areas of the borders. And if it's a really small garden, the volume or the area of the walls and boundaries and fences could actually be more than the floor itself. So think about those boundaries. Think about using climbers. Think about small trees in a small garden. No point in planting willows or the large forest trees, but smaller trees like silver birch and malus and sorbus will be just right, and they'll cast dappled shade, which will again just give you that feeling of seclusion and bringing a little bit of calm and shade into what could be a very hot situation. Absolutely important. The structures that we can build in a garden are things like a pergola, which should take you from place to place, things like overhead beams that project out from a house, and even tree canopies, which also help to define vertical space. All of those structures you can grow plants into and over. In a sunny area, you can think of wonderful fragrant plants, and fragrance is important in the garden, like jasmine and Tracheliospermum and honeysuckle. In shade, you can use Clematis montana, which is a wonderful shade plant. So the overhead structures and the structures that you can use for climbing plants, and incidentally fruit as well. You can train fruit over a fruit tunnel, which will look absolutely wonderful. Think of a fruit tunnel leading the way down to the vegetable garden. What could be better than that? Over the years, I really have realised that not everybody wants or can necessarily afford a garden designer to come and personally design the garden. So I developed the garden planning service, which I could do at long range, and it works really well. I give you the garden you want based on a questionnaire that I'll send you. You can drop me an email, or you can even write to me for that matter. I will then send you the questionnaire. You can fill that in, and it will cover really everything that you want in the garden. Also, which is very important, which I put on the questionnaire, are you keen, average or lazy gardener? And it honestly doesn't matter which one you are, but then I can tune the planting to make the garden work for you and not the other way about. So contact me by email or look at my website where you'll see lots of information and also details about the garden planning service there as well. But do let me know, because I'm a dedicated garden professional and I just want to help people have a superb garden that works for them.
Sign me up, David. Imagine your launch barbecue after completion of your garden project and being able to say, designed by 11 times RHS Chelsea Gold medalist David Stevens. Thanks for watching, and do leave some feedback if you enjoyed it. Smash that like button and please subscribe. Take a look at our Loving Your Garden Facebook group while you're at it. 420,000 members now, another 20,000 since I started this video project a week ago. Take a look and be inspired. Happy gardening!